to glory,
but e-buggy pays the bills. Welcome to the No Name RC podcast. Get ready for some serious bench racing. But be warned, we speak our minds, express our thoughts, and sometimes things can get a little rowdy.
Hate, and he just was influenced by the hate coming from the left, the hate coming from the right.
And let's get back to more club racing and less of this grabbing racing.
It's hard not to be arrogant when you're always right. You know?
See what I mean? That's exactly why people call you arrogant, Max.
You may not agree with everything we say, but it's definitely worth a listen.
And our pick, can you stop whatever you're doing?
Join your host, Lefty the Great, with co-hosts and guests as they get together to chat RC.
Hey, after that race that I watched this morning, I have to talk about it.
There we go. $100 right here, $100 throw. Oh no!
I like this.
Yes, indeed. Nitro's the glory, but e-buggies pays the bills. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode number 282 of the No Name RC podcast. I know I've been kind of teasing people this for some time. About a Ty Tessman interview. Well, here it is. It's finally here. But before we can do that, I'd like to say thank you to everybody. Shout out to all the patrons and YouTube members of the NNRC. Without you guys, we can't do this. That extra help helps us out a lot. You guys got early release of this podcast by a few days. Thank you to the NNRC squad around the world. We can't do without you guys for all the support. The NNRC is definitely a worldwide podcast. We greatly appreciate the support from around the world. And shout out to everybody that tunes in and listens to us. All right. Also, we can't do this without awesome companies that support us. And without these companies, we couldn't keep these bills paid and these lights on. We have in the written description, we have links, affiliate links, coupon codes, and just links to these companies. If you guys can use those, it helps us out a lot. Maybe you can save some money. Maybe you get a little slice. If not, if there's not any affiliate or coupon code, just say, hey, we heard about this on the No Name RC podcast. They are Invisible Speed, High Tech RC, Corsatec USA, Sidewinder Fuel, Mayako, Beach RC, Techno RC, Clinic RC, Stacked RC, RaceCraft USA, RC Box Club, Call RC, Elite RC Productions, Florida RC Championships, RC Body Armor, Gene Strout Jr.'s Racing Builds, House of RC, RCGP, shout out to our drivers, David Runnerfolk, Robert Battier, Alexander Hagberg, Matty G, Pekko Evenin, Una Hotman, and the Iceman, Mason Fuller. So thank you to all of those companies for their support. Thank you guys out there for all the support. We can't do it. And a big shout out to all the patrons and YouTube members once again. All right. So as I said, no Max, no nothing, just me. I recorded this interview with Tessman, I would say over a month ago. I first heard him go on my buddy EKJ 24000, Corey Jordan's podcast. He did some good interviews with him, Jeremy Quartz, and Cody King. So if you want to check that out, go check it out. I'll leave a link for that in the written description of this podcast. EKJ 24000, give him a sub and a like. Shout out to my boy Corey Jordan. He had Ty Tessman on. I had Corey Drakenberg on last year, and I ended up having a really good chat with him, and he was very candid, and he was very adamant about getting Ty on, so I think he might have pushed him as well. It was a good chat with Ty, and I've never really talked to Ty on that much. I've talked to him at the races briefly, but never extensively like we did on the podcast. So it was new for me as well, getting to know him and do that. No timestamps, no nothing, just a straight podcast. I want to thank Ty Tessman for his time. Whoever else encouraged him to do it, maybe Corey Drakenberg out there, 5150, come drive with us. Thank you if you did. I hope you guys enjoy it. And I still kind of sad over this, like, and is, still a good driver in his prime and retired early, but seems to be happy with his decision. Or is he? We shall see. You shall see. Let me know at the end of the podcast what you guys think, and I hope you guys enjoy it. But before that, I would like to say that this is brought to you by the Dakota Slide Race RC Club. They are holding the Midwest National July 13th and 14th, 2024. They have the 8-scale Nitro Buggy class, Truggy, E-Buggy, E-Truggy, 10 scale open, 40 plus E-Buggy, and novice. This is a cash payout race up to $9,000 in prize money, $1,000 to whoever wins all 3 pro classes. This is being held at the Aberdeen, South Dakota Brown County Fairgrounds. This is where the race is. Sean Van Dalen, Seth Van Dalen's father, will be the RD. And you can go there and win yourself some money if you want. Check them out. Dakota Slideways Midwest Nationals coming up July 13th and 14th. In fact, we even have a video for it. Let me find it so you guys can check it out. Thank you. Check out Dakota Slideways. Joining me in the virtual studio tonight is a man that needs no introduction. If you've been into RC racing, 8-scale RC racing, 10-scale RC racing for the last 20 years or so, you would know who this, not 20 years, but definitely close to 20. You would know who this gentleman to my virtual left is. He's a 17-time national champion. I hope that's correct.
18, actually.
18. Okay, see, there we're going to correct it. 18-time Raw national champion. 2014 world champion, has made every top 3 in the world championships since 2012 to 2018, and had a top 5 at the last worlds. And I think you've made 7 world finals. I did some math. Okay. 2008, 2012, 16, 18, 22. So no, my math's off. So, but welcome Ty Tessman, who is now a retired RC racer and living the good life up there in Alberta, Canada now. Welcome. Oh, Canada.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yes. So I appreciate that you came on. I know probably the last thing you want to do is talk about RC at this time as you're now moved on and enjoying your retirement. But I wanted to play a video because I want to start this podcast off with, when the world first saw you, right? So I want to play this video, and I want to know, after we play this video, what was going through your head, what was going through your brain when this happened. So you're at it. Let's put some volume on it, because this was awesome. So we're looking at the 2008 World Championships. There you are.
This is the moment everybody wanted to see.
14 years old, and you just made a World Championship final. I want to know, how did we go from racing in Canada to being right there at that moment? And what was you thinking right there as you stood on that pit lane at this track and saw all these people doing the wave, and you just made your first final at a World Championship?
Well, we'll start at how we got there, and I started early with my grandma and grandpa bought me I think it was a New Bright RC car, just a cheap one, and I drove that till it broke, which didn't take very long. But then I got a Wild Dagger, which is 4-wheel drive monster truck. Drove that made a kind of a local club. Started that with my parents and a couple other people, and then got a RC10 T3, and then just kind of snowballed there to racing in Canada. And we kind of explored like out of Alberta, and then we started, once I could win in Canada, then we figured we'd go down to the States and see what it was like. And I went to the Nitro Challenge the first time and was in the G main. and realized
Really?
how not only how fast the guys were, but how consistent everybody was. And that's really what I lacked. So just went back to Canada, practiced a bunch, kept going to races. I think we tried to do 1 or 2 a year in the US for those early years. And we had started a hobby shop shortly before we went down to the States for the first time. And just to kind of fund my racing. So my parents went on a big risk starting that up. I worked there with them for most of my days, like after school, after I was homeschooled. So after we get off school, go to the hobby shop, work till 9 o'clock at night, and then repeat that every day, every weekday, and work Saturday, and then go to the track Sunday. Along with a couple weeknights, we'd go to the track as well. So just put in a lot of work and tried to get better. And every time we go to a race, we'd learn something either by watching the pros at a certain part of the track, or just trying to pay attention to the small details. Actually, early on, I tried to model my driving after Jared Tebow because he was so smooth and so precise, and he would make the track the shortest possible distance, and that's how he won races. So I tried to mimic that early on, and then obviously my driving has evolved and changed since then. But kind of did that, and then started making the C main at Nitro Challenge, then the B mains, and barely breaking the A mains like at the bigger races. And I think I was in the B main, the Nitro Challenge before that Worlds, and then we went to the Worlds warm up, which was early 2008, and I got third there. And I think that's kind of when it started to gain more confidence and momentum. And then when the Worlds came, it was a horrible, horrible start. If you watched it early in that race, or if you followed it early in that event, I had some bad qualifying. I got disqualified one time from my car being too wide in the mud. Like, it was just a disaster kind of qualifying. But I think I was in I can't remember, 128th final maybe, and started bumping up, and I bumped all the way to the semifinal, I believe, and my throttle servo blew out in warm up, and my dad and Travis Mezquel got the radio tray changed in like 3 minutes, I think. So then I had to start from pit lane, but I still got on got going just behind everybody else, and was able to bump into the main. So starting, like you said, what was going through my mind at that point? It was really just, I had basically nothing to lose, so I wasn't even that nervous. The final before, when my radio tray went out, I was extremely nervous. But after I made it to the final, it was just kind of like a breath of relief, I guess. And then I just drove as good as I could, and my car definitely was good early on to midpoint, but then I chose too hard a tire, and I started falling back a bit. But it was just kind of a race. I wasn't really all that nervous because I didn't have much expectation still. I was just kind of just driving as good as I could, and ended up 7th.
Okay, so up to this point, I guess I want to redress a little bit. How was the RC scene in Canada when you started? Was you racing? I know you did a lot of indoor racing, and obviously it's Canada. You can only race for a certain amount of time every year outdoors. So how was it when you was young coming up? Was it a little bit better than what it is now? What was it like in Alberta?
There was definitely more tracks early on. And you could obviously you could only race in the warm months, which wasn't a real long time, but then we'd race on-road in the winter because we could race indoors, and there was no real carpet off-road yet to speak of. So it was on-road. I didn't really enjoy it as much, but it was better than doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the back of our hobby shop, we had a carpet track with mini tees, and that's what we'd race and kind of practice with back there. And then we had a track somewhat local to us. It was really local. It was like 10 minutes down the road, and we'd race 10 scale off-road in there, and carpet with wood jumps and stuff. And I was kind of just playing around with me and a few other guys. So I tried to do that in during the week, a couple nights a week, just to get track time in. But it definitely was difficult not being able to run 8 scale and just kind of going to these 8 scale races and trying to get in the groove in the winter months, for sure.
Well, how did you start to overcome that? as you started, I guess, as you went to more of these races, you got more experience, right? And yeah.
Basically, it was just a time thing. Like we spent from the first race we went to in the States. Actually, it was before Nitrous Challenge. It was in 2003. So from 2003 to, I think I won my first Nitrous Challenge in 2010. That's basically how long it took me to get from the G main to my first win. So it was a long road of going to races, being in the C main, being in the B main, and just kind of gaining confidence, learning about the cars, trying to get like keep your car together was a big thing back then, because not everybody's car stayed together. It seems like more back then than lately. Trying like the tips and tricks and the little the small details to make your car last, because the cars weren't as durable, the engines weren't as reliable. So that all was a big thing that we learned along the way as well. And kind of dealing with nerves, because I was super nervous at Nitrous Challenge the first time I went. Like my knees were knocking. I couldn't even barely stand as I was driving. And it's funny that the nerves haven't really changed a whole lot as far as the amount of nerves. It's just changed different it's different how it feels. It's still the same amount of pressure, but just in a different way.
How you handle it, I would say, because you've gotten older and more mature.
Right. That helps too. Yeah. It's like I've been getting better with handling the pressure, but also the pressure is growing as I get more advanced in my career. And
I did hear that. I did hear you say that.
Yeah. So it's kind of a weird feeling that way, I guess.
Yeah. I would imagine so. So in this time that you're leading up to the World Championships, are you getting any type of sponsorship help, any type of help from any companies up at that time?
So actually, a lot of people asked why I stayed with Hot Bodies so long. And the reason I stayed with them so long is because they sponsored me in 2004. After I won my first race in Canada, I was basically nobody. The Canadian market was super small. So it's not like there was a bunch of people I could represent to, but Tatsuro, the owner of Hot Bodies back then, he gave me a full ride, which helped out extremely. Like we wouldn't have been able to go to near as many races if we wouldn't have had that. So that was a huge blessing. And basically the reason why I stayed with him so long, because he was loyal, like he went on a limb for me. So I'm going to be loyal to him as long as he owned the company. And I mean, it worked out to have a lot of success together. Like there was a lot of people early on saying, why'd you run for Hot Bodies? Because the car back then, it was a Lightning 2, I think. It wasn't all that great in comparison, especially like right before the D8 came out, it was kind of falling behind. And it was a bit of a holdback, but it also taught us about setup more, because to try and make that car work was a lot more work than just going and getting a current car that was better. So you didn't learn as much, I don't think, if you got on a big team and started just with a good car. You weren't pushed to try and learn everything. And I think that's where a lot of knowledge came from my dad and learning that early on.
And okay, so after DNC, obviously Hara wins the race, HB's first of 3 world championships. You're on at this point, like a star-studded team. You got guys like Hara, he just wins. Roberts is on the team. He was like an engineer, or he designing a car as well, designing one of the cars.
He wasn't an engineer. He just kind of helped design stuff. Yeah, I think he ran SolidWorks or AutoCAD or something early on.
Okay, and then you had like Josh Alton. Wasn't Josh Alton the engineer? I'm confused. He was
the engineer from early on. I think I don't exactly know when he started, but he designed the D8,
right,
and kind of went through that.
The D8. No, so the D8. I think shortly after this came out the car that had like the plastic and the aluminum chassis. That's the D8 what we're talking about.
That was a CR8.
CR8. Okay.
The D8 was the one that Hara won the Worlds with.
Right. Okay.
We ran from like 2008 to 2010.
Okay. Excuse me for that. I just remember that car being in the magazines. So after you do this World Championship, what does life change for you a little bit after this? Obviously, everybody knows who Ty Tessman is. You make the final at the Worlds. What happens next in your life?
Well, I did started to get travel from Hot Bodies after that race. And I got more sponsorship from OS Engines. So the sponsorships increased a bit. expectation increased a bit. So after that, I was able to go to more races, kind of accelerated my career a little bit as far as like getting the next step. It wasn't like all of a sudden I could make the main every time because I still struggled making the mains like until early 2009, kind of I started making mains, but it didn't change a whole lot, like not as much as you'd think.
Like you weren't out there. They didn't say, "Here, we're paying you $100,000 a year. You're on it now." Right. That's what a lot of people think. You make the world championships and you got a salary right away.
Yeah, that's not, especially nowadays. That's definitely not true.
So, you said that your first big, I guess your first big win was in 2010 at DNC.
Yes, 2010 Truggy at DNC. Yeah.
Right. So this is when. So I also want to say this is also a very good era of RC, as well. I would say 2008 to up to about 2018 ish. I would say maybe 10 years, maybe a little bit less.
Yeah.
But it's a golden era of RC. 8 scale is booming. Trug is out. There's lots of money in the industry as well. I would say, Horizon hasn't brought up everybody yet by this time, so everybody's still individual. You do well at the 2010 DNC. Then we go to you don't make the final at the 2010 Worlds in Thailand. We see Cody King win that, but you did show some. What happened to you at the 2010 Worlds? I was trying to research this and I couldn't find out.
So at that Worlds, we had just gotten a new engine, which was the 2101 actually, which is probably my favorite engine from OS. But at that time, they were experimenting with carburetors, and I didn't have a lot of time on the engine because they got it to me, I think, a couple weeks before the Worlds only. It wasn't very much time, so I didn't have a lot of time. Looking back, I shouldn't have run it because I didn't have enough experience with it. But the carburetor gave us trouble, and I had to flame out in the semi. I was in a pretty good position, but I had a flame out, which took me out of the race. So I had good pace there. I'm not saying I could have won, but I feel like I could have made the main and had some competitiveness. We had gone to the warm-up early, I think January of that year, and I top qualified and was leading before I had electronic failure, or a switch fail actually. So I feel like I could have competed there. It's just I had bad luck and made a poor decision with the engine as far as running that carburetor and stuff like that.
Yeah, unfortunate, but that kind of happens. You're still very young in your career. But then we get into 2012, 2 years later, and it's like something clicked. And then you take the win at DNC and Truggy. You do the double at the Nationals that year. Obviously, you finished second at the Worlds. And then that just continues on. That kind of just you go into 2013 on a hot streak, 2014. But let's dress it back. You make that Worlds. I'm sorry, that DNC win. And 2011 comes along. You're getting ready for these World Championships that are coming up in 2012. Tell us a little bit about your 2011 that you remember from that one.
So 2011 was actually a pretty chaotic year as far as being like in the sponsorship with Hot Bodies, because a lot of stuff went down. We had kind of a falling out with Josh Alton, and that's when the D812 was kind of conceived. We had taken the D8 and put the Lightning back, like we went back to the Lightning car, put that front end on the car, and adjusted the rear end a bit to match. And that's kind of when, because I had always struggled in buggy. I could never go as good in buggy as Truggy. So that kind of brought my buggy up to speed, and I was able to win, I think, the Sidewinder race at Thunder Alley in late 2011 with that car. The first race we went to with it, I was able to win. And then came, like, that Torrance was the designer then. He took over the 8-scale program. And that's when he really started getting momentum in the buggy class, especially, was he took what we had done with the prototype car and made a pre-production car, and that's what I ran early, like 2000, or 2012 DNC, I had a pre-production car. It was the Lightning front end still, had some different shock towers and longer rear shocks. So that's what I won Nitro Challenge with, along with Truggy. So I had a double win with that. So that was huge for me and huge for the car. Like, it made leaps and bounds in the performance of the car, which again, that accelerated the designing process because that confirmed the car was good. We could get going on it. And actually the first race we had, the production car, was the Nationals. And there was a bit of struggle. I can't remember. I think I was struggling early on, but I was able to bump up, and then we made it into the main, and I was able to win. But there was, I may have seeded into the B main or something like that. There was early struggles in the Nationals, and then we figured the car out and was able to go and win that too. So that's kind of why all of a sudden it took off, was the car was a lot better.
Okay. So in comes Torrance de Guzman. You guys, did you have a previous relationship with him prior to this?
No, we kind of, he was working at Hot Bodies at the time, and he was on more of the toy side, like the HPI side. So after the fallout with Josh, we had Tatsuro said, okay, we're going to put Torrance working with you. And he was awesome to work with. Like, he was very understanding and open to ideas. If we could prove to him, if the stuff that he was doubting, if we could prove to it, he would go along with it. Like, there was certain things that didn't make sense to him, but we told him this is what it is doing, showed it to him, and he was all on board. So it was super good for having fast productivity and being able to stay ahead of the other competition.
Yeah. So, and this is pre 3D printing as well, which is a big thing people are using now. How long was it taking to get stuff made? Like, if you guys went out and tested something, you liked it, and he approved on it, when would you have like a production type piece or part in your hands?
It fluctuated a little bit, but I would say between 2 and 3 weeks, which is pretty quick. Like, to have him design it and send it away, because it was all made in Taiwan. So that's, I think that's a pretty decent turnaround.
Absolutely. So it sounds like everything's starting to click here at HB. It's gaining momentum. If you're doing well in America, obviously. Going over into the 2012 Worlds. Also, you're also in this time, you're becoming the face of the 5150 Come Drive With Us series. You know, obviously with Corey Drakenberg, who we did interview. I can't remember which one it is, but it's her. He was making his documentaries through Proline. Your packages are, you got Proline tires, you got the OS edges. Like, this is the package to have at this time in RC. Like, it's been certain packages in RC where have been unbeatable. And but I'll give an example of that. Adam Drake, when he won those 2 nationals, like won it 1 year, I think, then he missed a year. He was running like GRP tires and the GRP engine, and like that package just seemed to work really well with everybody. Obviously, he went on to different tires and all that stuff later on. But there's certain times in RC where just a package works. And you had that at this time. And I also think having that symbiont relationship with with de Guzman, and able to get these parts done, and him listening to you, was something that was also very beneficial to you and your father.
Right. Yeah. Like, being able to work with my dad, along with, like, he came up with a lot of ideas that made my car a lot better. But then having Torrance just, like, not just blindly agree with stuff, but actually think about it, and we would discuss it and make progress super quickly. Having that mindset, it was really enjoyable to race, because we could actually, it was just an enjoyable time to race, because we could make progress and just stay ahead of the game. And we had obviously good tires, good engine, everything was kind of clicking. So just the momentum we had was really good. And obviously getting along with the engineer was a big part of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And at this time, I don't know how everybody else was having it. Like, I don't think it was as open as it is nowadays, where everybody can have that direct line to the engineer like you had. So that was definitely, it
was definitely an advantage, and not a common thing, for sure.
I
know a lot of drivers were complaining about their stuff. They couldn't get the companies to change. And that was pretty common back then. So being able to not struggle with that, I think, is how we stayed ahead.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So 2013 is a good year for you. You're going into 2014. You win at DNC. You win Truck Nats, I believe, in 2014 as well. We go to this world championship that's being held in Sicily. I can't remember. Sicily.
Sicily, I think.
Yes. I was actually in the UK at this time. Kind of been out of RC for some time. I was there working, and then I got back into it. And I remember watching this World Championships live. It was like I was like back into RC deep when I was working over in the UK. And I'll never forget watching this man. I was sitting in my apartment in Good Street, and I watched you take off from that final. And like you was one of the this is probably the year Ryan Mayfield was supposed to win one, but you was also a big favorite. And then we had a lot of fast. Lee Martin was fast. A lot of these guys were really fast. This is like hardcore 8-scale racing. When you made that, I'm waiting for it to come up on the video here. When you made that first corner mistake, I know you said you and Ryan had an agreement that you wasn't going to overtake each other or do the double. Sorry, wasn't going to do the double, and you went in single. Dude, when you made that mistake, I remember sitting in my apartment like, no, like what happened? I'll never forget. I think I even screamed. I was like, what happened? I was just geeking out on RC. Tell us a little bit about that. How did you overcome that adversity to go on and win your first world championship? And tell us a little bit some of the special things that remind you that unique things about that race and period.
Well, starting off the race, I obviously didn't plan that. I was trying to go tight and not blow the line, not do the double. So I wasn't really used to that because I could come around the end of the straightaway and jump the double every time flawlessly. So it was a bit of a different line. I should have practiced it in warm-up, but I didn't. And I couldn't believe when my car got stuck on there. Usually you can get off the pipe quick and get back in line, but it literally rode the pipe the entire way. I was like, are you kidding me? So then I'm sure it for sure wasn't me driving to catch up that quickly in the rest of the race, how well I was driving. My car was amazing, which gave me a little bit of confidence, but for sure God was behind the wheel. And that's not humanly possible, I don't think, to catch up that fast. So I'm not taking credit for that. I think he calmed my nerves, and it was something that was like surreal to me as it was even happening. I didn't really know what to think. It didn't even sink into me that I had won the world championships till probably a week and a half later. So it was a very surreal time for me, and I'll always remember it. I always remember the feeling, like it's going to stick with me. So it was just a very unique experience. And if I wouldn't have done that, I don't think the win would have been as special.
That was an amazing drive. I mean, Mayfield was out there. He made some mistakes. Had I think it was a steering servo go, a throttle servo go. He was driving TLR at that time. I remember this was also a very unique track because it had a very unique surface. I think you described it as concrete, but it had some like stucco. It looked like stucco when you said on the Come Drive with Us. And by the time that it was just straight up concrete. How do you adjust as a driver to something like that?
Well, actually, before we kind of knew the track was going to be concrete based on what they had told us before the race. Since there was no warm-up, we went to Torrance de Guzman's backyard, which was completely concrete. It was like a concrete pad, but it was like the brush stuff, so it had like abrasiveness to it. So we went and set up a little cone track to go and test tires and try to get Proline to get a harder compound that would work good, which they came out with the X1 tire for that race. So being able to test on that and kind of get a little bit, like it obviously didn't have jumps or bumps or anything, but just to figure out kind of the diff oil range we had to be at, figure out that tire, which was a huge benefit, that tire. That compound was pretty awesome for those extreme conditions. So that gave us a good advantage. When we did get to the Worlds, the first practice run, I think we changed like 8 things on the car, 8 separate adjustments, which, knowing the car for the last 2 years really helped us know which direction we had to go. And I remember someone questioning us. They were surprised that we changed so many things. But after the first practice run, I think I was in the top 3 for the next practice, like overall top, like fast, like for speed. So adjusting to it wasn't as difficult as I had anticipated going into the Worlds. Like I really had no idea, no expectation, because I had never run on something like that high bite yet. Back then it wasn't, none of the tracks were that hard and that high grip. So it was kind of foreign still, but we could just make adjustments as I went after that and just kind of fine tune the car. But there came a time, I think it was maybe halfway through qualifying. Like, obviously we made changes for the rain part, but halfway through qualifying, I don't think I changed my car after that because it was so good. Like, we couldn't get it any better, and I just drove, and I felt like my car was fast enough and I could drive it for an hour without making a mistake. I can't hear.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. I remember listening to the commentary where it was raining. You guys spent very low in diff oils to compensate for that. Didn't make a difference because it couldn't still catch up to the guys who got a dry track. But having that tire, I mean, who would have thought to go out there and practice on that type of concrete, right? You know, and I think these are the type of things that you was doing at this time that nobody else was doing, in my opinion, as well.
Yeah, I think there was more room for improvement back then, I think is what the big thing was. And I mean, my dad was a big part of that. He was there to motivate me and have these ideas that really accelerated my success, especially like, to get to that next level and to do the things that nobody thinks about. So I got to give a lot of credit to him. But yeah, there's a lot of, nowadays everyone has basically the same engine. Everyone's car is really good. Everyone's either on the same tire or between a couple different brands that are really close to each other. So the separation is a lot less in the equipment than it used to be. So now you can just go drive as hard as you can for 45 minutes and your car's going to stay together. There's very little, if you notice, there's very little DNFs anymore.
Well, absolutely. Also, something that I realized that right there, we finally got to this part of the video. Excellent video by Corey here. He caught that just right. I learned this about your dad. His mind, where his racecraft and his mind. Maybe was that when at the 2022 at Redovon when everybody was failing tech for cars being too wide. He goes, "Oh, I just throw dust. I just dust up the tires and stuff so it goes through there." Because what he said, it was basically gunk making cars stick through there, and I was like, "Oh, that's so intelligent! Like that's so intelligent." And he goes, "This isn't our first rodeo," and I was like, "I know." I was like, it like blew my mind. But to think of stuff like that, I think up to that time, with also, and it was also a time where I heard you say that on Corey's podcast, where not everybody's equipment was up to par as what you had as well, even engines, and it was still a very, like you said, lots of DNFs happened. DNS, I mean, even this race, like Cody King had a DNF, Boots bent a shock shaft in warm up, stuff like that. Stuff like that doesn't happen too much nowadays in RC because the quality of these cars is really good nowadays. So, and engines too. Like back then, you had to have that OS engine. That if you wanted to win a race, you had to have an OS engine. And tires, Proline at that time also was the number one tire brand in the world.
Yeah, they definitely were the number one. There was a lot more outdoor tracks too, which I think helped. So also getting to the tracks, I think the tracks were a big part of why the racing has changed. Back then, there was rhythm sections. The tracks were demanding. There was stuff to actually break your car on if you weren't careful. And I think that that weeded out the people that could just go full throttle and get through stuff. And nowadays, the tracks are, I'm not trying to criticize, but they're very full throttle and very easy. So the competition is much closer because everybody can go the same speed almost now. There's no separation. Like at Nitro Challenge, if you look back at that video, I don't know if it's somewhere, but the 2010 Truggy Nitro Challenge, I remember it because I'd won, obviously. So the layout or the rhythm section, I think it was a 9 or 12 pack of triples. So you'd go in there. If you screwed one of them up, you couldn't make the other ones. You had to either double or single or get your way through after that. But there was a huge advantage if you could go through them triple, 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 or triple, triple. So stuff like that just doesn't happen anymore. And then it opens the window for if your engine's maybe not quite as good, if your car's not quite up to snuff, it doesn't matter as much because there's no hard jumps to make. It's just you need to go fast as you can to this corner, hit this bump as hard as you can, and launch your car and
So you're saying the tracks are too easy nowadays? To an
I'm
extent.
not trying to sound bitter, but it's or to
hey,
talk badly about it, but it's if you notice the tracks, there's no more rhythm sections. There's a lot more
Mhm.
humps. There's stuff that you can make with almost no power if you had to, and then if you want to, or like the fast guys, obviously hit it as fast as they can, like a bump, and just launch their car to the corner. That doesn't take as near as much skill as trying to downside a big triple or trying to downside a jump right before a corner or try to make a jump out of a corner. You just don't see that kind of stuff anymore. So I think that's where, along with cars getting better, engines getting better, tracks getting less demanding, it's all just tightened that separation up a lot. Like there's almost no separation anymore because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like go into a European track with lots of corner speed, right? Like a track like Radovon.
Kind of, yeah.
It's so you just don't get that type of track in America. It's 180 jump 90 30. Maybe the fastest corner is maybe coming onto the straightaway and going off the straightaway. But when you look at, I watched Montpellier what I could this past weekend, and they had a rhythm section, and I was watching these guys come through there, and I'm like, how are they going through there so fast? And then the rest of this track is fast too, right? One little slow section, and that makes you, when you could carry that corner speed to the next corner and keep it up, that's what makes you faster than people nowadays. Like jumps, most jumps are pretty good nowadays. They don't get as blown out as they used to. Tracks may get a little blown out now, but yeah, I would say that maybe we need those type of like there's sections that make you think, oh, do I triple double and stuff? We don't get them anymore, and it's hard to make that section good too, right?
Yeah.
We had so we had a rhythm section at Masters of Dirt because you came to that race.
I was just going to mention that actually. So that was the first time in a very, very long time that there was a rhythm section that you could do two different ways that was nearly the same speed.
It was two different ways the same speed. 3 was not too fast.
Right. So then that, if you notice, that had a lot more DNFs. There's a lot of cars breaking on that, and a lot more crashing. Like
a lot more crying too. People were not happy
for sure because we've kind of gone down this it's been the easy road, and then all of a sudden the track comes and then throws everyone off, and then no one's expecting it, and everyone has to try and adapt quickly, and that's just it's just then track owners get discouraged or scared off of making it too difficult of a track again. So it's kind of an uphill battle, I would say, if you want to try and break this habit of the tracks. It was really hard.
Track was hard.
It was extremely hard, yeah.
People were so used to having 98, 99% that percentage, that consistency percentage right. on live RC. Well, everybody's not got good consistency percentage because they're making mistakes. So you're still topping it up. It's just you got to race, and that track was hard. Oh man, people were not happy with that track a lot. But I was happy with it because it made for great racing, lots of crashing, lots of DNF, different lines through that section. And then even the stock cars were able to get through there in a certain way. Makes you a better driver. I will 100% agree with that. Yeah. All right. So you win the world championships. We're having this is when I would say you go to superstar status in the RC. You was there, but then you were like vaulted. You went from you made 2012. By the way, 2012 you came second at the Worlds too, which was a great accomplishment. Yeah. You win the Worlds. What happens in Ty's life after that? Is it like busy, traveling all the time, getting those big checks and on the road?
So I did get a pay raise for sure. Mm-hmm. Got a good bonus check, obviously, for winning the Worlds, but also OS made a signature engine of mine, which is pretty cool. That was something.
Which was one of the low profile head with the fish on it, right?
It was back then. It was a tall head with the fish on it. Yeah, it was right. A tall silver head. The low profile one was in 2016, I think.
Dude, I know two guys that say that's the best OS engine ever designed.
I feel the same way. That package, like the carburetor, that engine, even the low head, I thought made it that much better.
And both of these guys swore on that they got 10+ minute run times, and they're just regular racers.
Right. Yeah, it was
So
a really, really good engine. And it was the
yes, absolutely.
same engine I ran from 2014 all the way to uh, whenever I switched
20, I
2020, I
think you
think.
switched.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the same engine exactly. It looked different because OS wanted to have a new look and new version of it, but it was
Mhm.
exactly the same engine.
So 2014 happens. You're in the world. You're on top of the world. The doors open for you, and you're still like on a tear. You're still doing well at races here, the world champion. The what what was it like after that? It was more expectations, wasn't it? More pressure.
For sure, more pressure. It
Mm-hmm.
was still like going to Nitro Challenge the year after. It still felt like it was just as big of a race. Like it didn't
Mm-hmm.
feel like, oh, now this is every race now is smaller and less important. It was still just as important to try and win, and obviously you had more pressure because now everyone's trying to beat the world champion. So you have that on
Mm-hmm.
your back. So it's definitely difficult in a different way. It got a little bit easier because I had more confidence in a different way. So that's kind of where I'm talking about that it was just a different kind of pressure. But we just kind of worked with Torrance still and tried to keep improving the car and moving forward with that. Tried not to let my confidence get too big. Like try not to get to my head and just keep focusing on one race at a time and just pushing forward like that. And not trying to get too high on myself.
But and also at this time, you're still working with Torrance. His like, if you guys need something, it's getting made.
Yeah, it's for sure. It's still
Yeah.
really good and good progression we made.
Yeah, and at this time, I'm going to say now 2014, 15, 16, Proline is still number one tire in the world. OS engines, you have a great package. If you ain't, I think people that maybe have just gotten into RC in the last 5 years wouldn't understand this. But what JC is now, like in Southeast and America, that's what Proline was. But they were spending like big money on the there was a lot of money into into RC because of companies like Proline and OS and companies like Maxima and all this type of stuff that we're going to delve in. But they were paying a lot of money to get they were paying good money to get the documentaries made, which were great. It became all Proline drivers. Obviously you became the face of that. You're riding high, you're doing good. But then we signed the guy from Sweden, David Ronnefalk, comes into the HB team, I think 2015, I think it was. Yes.
Yes, yeah.
You're right. So now you're a little older than him, I think, too. So you're a little older than him. You already got a world champion. Here's the hot up and coming young European champion. I know you said that on Chorus Show there was no rivalry, but I swear there was some, maybe not at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
I know he went to DNC that year. He won truck.
Mm-hmm.
You guys gave him the setup to win truck and all that type of stuff. But going into 2016, Ronnefalk's running. I didn't think he told me once he didn't win a race all of 2015, like a big race, buggy race, and then won the world championships. Well, Ronnefalk was definitely, he's the hot guy on the hot RC race on the European side. He's seen some success in the USA. You're the world champion. You're the face of HB. There has to start being some sort of, all right, I now have to work a little, I wouldn't say work harder, but he's coming after you, right? He's coming after your top spot. Like, you're the top guy. Tell us a little bit about that. I think someone said, I don't know how true this was, but like 2016, you worked without a contract from HB?
So 2016, it was because the Tatsuro had Hot Bodies got sold because of bankruptcy or whatever whatever happened. The new guy took over, Neidhart took over, and I think it might have been mid-year or something. It was something weird, like kind of transition over
like that.
Yeah, that didn't really. It was halfway through 16 actually, because we were getting towards the end of 16 and getting worried because we didn't have a contract and he would give us a contract. So that was a whole mess. But it was because the new ownership took over. We had been racing kind of just under trust without a contract, and that was making us nervous. But then getting back to the rivalry, that it definitely didn't start off like that. We were very welcoming to him, and we worked really good together right at the start. And then it just seemed to kind of dwindle a little bit. It wasn't like, it didn't really turn to a big rivalry. I think social media and everything blew it out of proportion because
people like me.
come.
I wasn't involved. I wasn't involved back then. I wasn't in RC back then. But rivalries are right. We need rivalry. We need that
sure.
in our sport. You know, we need that. And he's the young European guy. You're the young North American guy. I don't want to call you American because you are Canadian. And I have to remind my American friends that when they say we won 4, no, you won 3 and 1 Canadian. Going into those world championships here in in North America, you are once again a favorite to do well at this race. I know the double is on your brain at this time. Only one person has done that. That was Monsi. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. The Italian driver. How was that, man? Like, was it a little bit more pressure now trying to do the repeat?
For sure, that was in the back of my mind. I was trying not to let it take over too much because I was just trying to treat every race again like it was a separate standalone race and just look forward instead of trying to make some history or something happen. So trying to deal with that wasn't too bad. It was in the back of my mind, but it wasn't something that crazy. Working with David, our relationship seemed to have turned more competitive than it started, which is, you call it rivalry, competitive, whatever. But we still did like talk to each other about stuff and kind of try to work as a team, but still be basically 2 top competitors that were both trying to win just as hard as each other. And they were both capable of winning just as much as the other one was. So when you have teammates like that, it's always a little bit of tension. You saw it with Associated, saw it at Low C. Like it's not something that's uncommon. It's just, it was kind of my first experience with it because at Hot Buddies before that, we were pretty much by ourselves as far as like a top guy on the team. So it was a little bit different and new to me still, having that kind of relationship, trying to work together, but also still trying to win. After the Worlds when he won, it didn't really make much difference because I think I only ran one more race after that with Hot Bodies. And at that time it was still no contract, and it was like middle of December, I think. I went to that Dover race and still no contracts. So we're like, you know what? We're not going to get, like we'd seen what Horizon did to Adam the year or whatever it was before, basically running him into January and then saying I'll give him an ultimatum that was completely unfair. So I didn't want that to happen. I wasn't sure if it was going to happen, but I didn't want to take a chance. So then we parted ways with Hot Bodies. And then it seemed like the relationship faded from there, kind of dropped off quite rapidly. And that's something actually I noticed, speaking of that, that it happens a lot in the industry. People's friendships don't mean as much, not everybody, but some people's relationships don't mean as much as their sponsorship. So if you switch teams, they completely act differently, which is crazy to me because you're still literally seeing each other at the track and nothing has changed between you two besides the car you're running. They're acting like you have switched, like playing for the opposing army. Like it's something it's very strange to me because when I switched teams, I didn't feel or have any hard
animosity towards people.
Yeah, I didn't really change. It was just I'm just running a different car. I mean, that
was a doggy dog. At this time, it's a. Also, you gotta understand at this time in RC, it's also like your dad, the package you're running, and then at that time also like Drake was like 2017 Mugen. So 2017 is when Mayfield joined Mugen. You know, Drake's running Mugen in 2016, I think it was. And then that whole combination, like that Mugen Proline, obviously Proline was. I keep coming back to Proline because it was such a big factor in this, and I think it's a big factor in this whole situation. That whole team right there, like, and Bornhorst was involved in it. You know, that's all. You guys are all clicking together. It was a very good time in RC, and it was very hard to beat you guys. So I think a lot of the animosity came from that, right? Wanting to beat you guys. When you're the top dog, everybody wants to come after you, right? And then you got to fend that off all the time.
Yeah. It's definitely when you're winning, everyone's a lot less friendly to you at the track. Like as far as like if you're smoking everybody, no one
Yes, of
really like
course.
wants to talk to you.
Yeah, of
That's one thing I
course.
noticed from when I was winning everything to then when I had some struggles. It seemed like a lot of people got more friendly, which was again kind of weird to me, but whatever. I guess they maybe just don't feel as threatened, so they let their guard down a bit. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
That's what
the
happens.
Pro line was very, very dominant and had a strong team. We had a lot of people on it.
Yep.
So it was kind of like you're saying, J Concepts now, where they have a very, very good tire and a lot of drivers, and it's kind of just the pack mentality that you can't really. It's very, very
Absolutely.
difficult to overcome.
Very hard. AKA and J, AKA will get you, and J Concepts was definitely a Southeast tire at that time, but they were kind of playing for second at that time.
Right. Yeah.
Against Proline.
You got to give Jason Rona props because he didn't give up. He was fighting for it for a very, very long time. He's done a lot of work and he had a lot of different threads to figure this out. So he has definitely earned it in having this. Yeah,
but you know what? It's so many more tire companies now than it was back then too.
For sure, there's a lot more tire companies, but he's still like
Proline
was back then, and there's way more.
Exactly.
So it's still obviously very, very dominant.
Like all the money that you see J Concepts putting into races, having the INS series, that's what all Proline was sponsoring everything, doing so much. There was so much money that they were pumping into the RC racing side of the industry because of the earner, right? All right. So we decided to go X-Ray. How did X-Ray come about? Like, what was your choices back in 2017?
So we hadn't really talked to a whole lot of people. We kind of knew teams just from being around them, what they were like. And X-Ray was one of those ones that, because of their capabilities, like making everything in-house, we thought that was a good option because we could have a direct line to the owner again, direct line to the engineers, and be able to make stuff super quickly. And they obviously had an 8-skill platform that needed some help. So we thought we could do that and kind of bring something to the table for them. And I mean, obviously their stuff everyone knows their quality is extremely good. They just need to know what to do. And I think you can see that early on, like we got them to change a bunch of stuff right away. And I was able to TQ Nitro Challenge first year with them.
What type of stuff did you get changed? Do you remember?
So first of all, everything was super precise and tight, like in the suspension arms and everything, which is awesome for on-road and for cars that don't get dirty. But 8-scale gets dirty, so you need to have play and stuff. You need to have slapping the arms back and forth, so when the car gets mud on it or dirt and fuel mix, that it doesn't bind the suspension up. And that's one thing that right away, like when we had the car, we were struggling with it immediately, but then figured out this is a problem. So we made room and everything, reamed out the hinge pins, and it became a completely different car. After that, we got them to make new plastics that were harder. Actually, not make, but just put the plastic they had into new pieces. Like they had the graphite material from 10 scale. We got them to do it in 8 scale, give us stiffer arms, which helped a bunch, stiffer steering blocks and rear hubs, which made the pillow balls work better. There's a lot of things that there wasn't, we didn't just get them to redesign the entire car right away. We just got them to do fine tweaks and just put different materials where different materials need to be, give more clearance where we need more clearance. And it accelerated the car's performance a lot in that very short time, just moving stuff around, kind of, if you will. Because the car itself was, I think they designed it when Savoya came over. This is all kind of speculation because he ran Mugen. It looked very much like a Mugen. And then when he left, they kind of still had the same design. So I thought they were actually wondering why we didn't get them to make a C-Hub right away. Like they thought we were going to come and tell them to make a completely different car, just how we had at the Hot Bodies car. And we're like, no, we want to try this the way it is. And I always felt that the pillow ball car went through bumps better and was handled rough track better, which I still do. So I was excited to try that and make that work. So we did a lot of testing again, did a bunch of work with that, and they were very responsive. We made good progress on the car. And obviously, 2017, the Nationals I was leading, actually the Nationals in 2017 had a receiver fail. So
you TQ'd DNC too, if I remember. You did run a DNC.
Yeah, top qualified DNC.
And then your switch came off or something.
Yeah, that was a whole adventure trying to find a bulletproof switch, which we did figure it out, but it was a bit of a trial and error kind of thing. Silver State that year, I don't really remember that one too vividly, but yeah, I think I won 18 Silver State. But anyway, still had really good success with the cars right out of the gate. So being able to do that at the level now the racing was at and the level everybody else's equipment was at, I think it's still pretty impressive. And a lot of people were kind of down on X-Ray and saying, well, you never did as good with X-Ray as before. And I think the competition has gotten
better,
extremely fast. Like within a couple years, it's jumped a couple levels. So being able to still be successful at that level right away, I think speaks a lot for how the cars were. Like I won just as many national championships with X-Ray as I did with hot bodies, and I was only with X-Ray for 7 years. So
I also want to reiterate, we talked about this. Like you was also at a point where you came into a point into RC when you was kind of there by yourself, right? There wasn't you was in a period of time, you wasn't embroiled in any big, like there wasn't no Ryan Cavallari, Ryan Mayfield, like they came up together. You had a next group of guys. You was kind of there. You was the dominant guy. I always say this, you guys did where your racecraft was impeccable. Dot your I's, cross your T's, your pitting, all that type of stuff. Good, your package was great. But then everybody's package just started to become great, right? And then everybody's I's and T's were dotted. They learned from you. Then you have these young kids that are coming up here and they're whipping and they're, throwing these cars and doing stuff that even maybe you wasn't really doing when you was younger, but you have to learn that. And so did all these guys have to learn that. So the competition, the speed that these cars are starting to get, they're getting faster every year, right? So you have to get faster every year. And it's not about DNFs. It's about, can I make my car whip and scrub and do all this type of stuff you have to do. So I heard you say that in the podcast. And funny enough, I was just talking to JQ about this. We was talking about the Montpellier race. And he says, we was talking about Runafuck. And he said, Runafuck, the time and guys used to just show up to races and be able to talent to overtake them, to take them, to carry them has come to an end because these guys who have talent are working just as hard now. Nowadays, this is now after Montpellier. That's what one of the things he said. So people have to understand the whole level of RC racing is rising. So that's coming up. Like they're coming. I want to say they were coming up to where you guys were, right? With the packages being good, the dotting all the I's, the T's, doing all the stuff that you guys were doing. So that's what made it really hard for you guys. Not hard, but that's what it made it seem like you wasn't as dominant as you was the previous years prior to that. I think it sounds like also X-Ray is very. I don't know how it was in the end, but we'll talk about that. But in the beginning, they are very receptive to change and what you guys wanted to get done to the car, and also this is a European-based team. Most of the drivers in Europe at that time, X-Ray, I think they had the Josh Wheelers and all that type of stuff, but they didn't have a racer of your caliber for quite some time, I would say. When you signed in 2017, so lots of things going on. I know this is. I told you we're going to talk about it, but let's go to 2017 Neo race right now. One of the things, I don't know how true this is, but you always heard this, is that at X-Ray it's like chassis is first, right? We've seen examples of this. We saw Martin Beyer I think he was running Proline and he was sponsored by Proline, had to run AK at the 2014 Worlds. There's other history with them making their drivers do things against their sponsorship because in their eyes, chassis comes first. 2017 Neo race, for those that don't know, you ran J Concepts tires in your final, and then it was a whole kerfuffle. It definitely got the world talking about this here. And you basically ran J Concepts tires for your finals instead of Proline tires. You issued an apology about it and said that you guys thought that was the right way to go. I want to ask you this. At that time in 2017, was it the pressure to get out there and get a win and impress X-Ray? Or was it just, we're going to do whatever it takes, we think this is the best thing to win? And you made that decision.
Yeah, so X-Ray they never pressured me and told me I had to run a different tire.
Mm-hmm.
They do believe chassis comes first, which,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of hard to argue when they're the one fitting all the bills. They're the one putting the most money into their main paycheck. The travel is all on them. So it's kind of hard to argue with them about that. And I do think tire companies in general expect a lot more than they should. In the fact of being loyal. And I'm not trying to make an excuse for what I did there, but it was a thing of, again, social media going ballistic over something they knew very little about. Like, it wasn't something that I betrayed Proline. Proline knew about it.
Okay.
We had talked to them earlier in the race because we hadn't received enough tires to make us through the entire race of the ones I was using, which is a bar tire. So if I wouldn't have done that, I would have had to either run a different compound, different tread, or bald tires, which all three of those would have resulted in very poor results. So we did what we thought we had to do. We were testing also at the same time because at that time Proline's dominance was declining. So we were trying to find something that was going to work better. So we thought that was a good opportunity, even though there's all these people that just want to find any little bit of dirt and just make the world out of it.
It makes RC so excited.
It does make it more exciting for sure, but there was a lot more behind the scenes than what people realized in that decision.
But that happens quite often, though. If in these races, and I know us regular people, we were like, "Well, he's sponsored by this company, and he should." But that happens quite often when a tire company doesn't have the right tire. It's still better for that driver to still do good, right? Than devalue to every other brand.
Yeah, for sure. Like it happened at the Worlds, and actually in Spain, there was a lot of drivers didn't run their tire brand for most of the race, and a lot of them switched to Hot Race because that was the tire to have back at that race. And it seems like no one cares as much. I mean, that Mayfield did get busted for that thing in Australia about the engine, which that was a kind of a shady deal as far as how it was received versus what happened behind the scenes. Because I talked to him and Adam about what happened, and it wasn't what was perceived online. So there's a lot of times when it either gets swept under the rug or completely blown out of proportion in a different way than it was actually done. So it's kind of just if you get bad luck or have someone hating on you at the time you're doing it is when it gets brought up, because it happens a lot. Like it's multiple times a year you'll see this major guy doing something or running something that he's not sponsored by, but most of the time it gets swept under the rug and no one cares. Especially if he doesn't win, it doesn't matter. If he wins, obviously people are paying more attention.
Moving on after 2017, you're going into 2018. You're still riding high. You go out. You win the nationals. You doubled on again in 2018 for the nationals that were at, where were they that year? And
Lakeside, maybe. I don't think.
No, Southside, because I was there. I was there.
That's the one. Yeah.
It was so hot there. It was hot.
Yeah.
Ooh, man.
It rained right after the final too. It was.
Ooh, nice. It was so humid. I go to Lake City quite often to visit because that's where Lance lives, and I go. Lake City's got to be the hottest place in Florida. It is hot. That track is actually moving to a indoor facility now.
Okay. Yeah.
It's still there, but they're gonna have a roof over it. It's not gonna be that same spot. They're moving to a different spot. I went to that. My first nationals, you dominated. You won truck and buggy. That was a very hard race too. Lots of more rain, and dealing with the humidity for tuning your engines and all that stuff and whatnot. So it was very hard. So it's like you still won national championships and stuff like that on the X-Ray. People will forget that, but you did.
Yeah, I won 9 of them actually with X-Ray. Sorry, X-Ray.
Yeah, because then you had the 10 scale because you're doing a lot more 10 scale at that time as well. How was that going for you?
It was good. It started off probably a little bit more of a struggle car-wise than 8 scale right at the beginning. I won the nationals. I won 3 of them, or all 3 electric classes at the nationals. But that I will give Proline more credit for that than X-Ray was. I think the tires we had was this new compound again. We were able to run that, and it was a huge advantage. So I think we told X-Ray that too. I said this win was the tires. We still need to work on our car, so don't get too fired up about that. Our car is awesome because it still needs work. We still need to figure out some geometry stuff and make it a little bit better. So they did that, and then we moved forward from there. But the 10th scale was always a little bit of a struggle. Actually, our 2-wheel was really good for a time there. Kind of when our 4-wheel dominance started to fall off, our 2-wheel gained traction. So it kind of swapped a bit. But it was 10th scale, especially in the last 3 years, it seemed like if you go to one race, the next time you went, there was like everyone was making such big improvements that it was like hard to kind of keep up unless you were doing a 10 scale race like every couple weeks,
More
every
work,
3
more
weeks or
time.
whatever. It was just, it seemed to be accelerating faster than 8 scale even was.
Okay. Also, you said that you started to see a decline in Proline's performance and their dominance. What was the reason for that? What would, if you look back, what would you think was one of the reasons for that?
I think the more indoor tracks, like the more race time races were happening, there was, like if you look at Thornhill, when it was uncovered, like when it was open, Proline tires were awesome. Covered, then it gets that polished, and that's when Proline didn't have a compound. So there was a lot of tracks that were changing and facilities that were changing, and that was, I think, why Proline was falling off, because Proline didn't really have really good tires for indoor because of the polished surfaces. Except the Neo Buggy race, which even at towards the end of the Neo Buggy race, you could see J Concepts was gaining traction in their compounds, and it seemed like even now compounds are way more important than tread. Just to how it's gripping the dirt, especially with the tracks being so smooth and so clean, that the tread makes less difference. Like if you look at me with Hot Race, I had done a lot of different tread stuff to try and adapt better. But it's still, a compound was basically the number one. And Proline hadn't really made much ground with compounds later in, like, towards the decline of their success as far as racing goes. So it just kind of gave it to J Concepts, which they just kept working, even though they were good. Like they were kind of at the top, they're still improving. So that's how you stay ahead, but you just don't let people pass you.
Do you think that Proline was just kind of, the writing was on the wall coming for them? They were just kind of not as interested in the racing side anymore?
I mean, it sure seemed like it. When I left, they had sold to Horizon, which that was the reason I'd left. But before that, they kind of seemed to be complacent almost, not wanting to move forward. And I don't know if they just couldn't figure the compounds out, but it did seem kind of like like the wind was out of their sails, and they kind of they lost momentum. And I don't know if the owner just didn't want to put that much money into racing, because they always said that racing wasn't making them money. So maybe that was the reason.
Yeah, because I mean, they did so much other stuff, right? Which is a great segue into the mass. I always call it the mass exodus at Proline. But it wasn't by you guys' choice. Obviously, it was Proline getting sold to Horizon. This time they had a huge team, like you, Drake, Bornhorst. Like it was so many people on the Proline team at this time, even though they weren't probably per se the still dominant tire that they once were. They were still very competitive everywhere. They were still competitive, so had a huge team. And I think that's when that I always like to say, like, it was a synergy at that time. Like, yes, you switched your chassis, but you still had the Proline tires, you still had the OS engine, everything was going good. And I think once Horizon came in and took over, and then I assume that they just made it where you guys could not drive for them because you have to get paid, obviously. And we know how they go in and they pinch pennies, but we'll ask you about that. It's like that synergy kind of left, that symbiont being between that you had with all those Proline drivers. They come drive with us stuff, all of that ran away right away as soon as Horizon bought Proline. Tell us a little bit when you found out about that. How did that happen?
So I can't remember when we found out, but it was pretty late in the year. And from what we'd seen them do to Adam with Losi and his departure from there, it pretty much, like, when that happened to Adam, I switched fuels from not running Nitrotane. I abandoned them because I didn't want anything to do with that company anymore. Because if they're going to treat Adam like that, someone who's made them who they are, I don't want anything to do with him. And that was basically, it was a very easy decision when it came to Proline being bought up by them. I just didn't want any part of it. I knew what it was going to turn into, and pretty much bang on what's happened to them is what I was expecting.
Yeah, it's non-existent nowadays. Non-existent.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, Cavalieri switched to them after that to low CN Pro line, and I was like wondering, what are you thinking? And it ended up only being a 1 year thing. And so it's if they're going to do it to one time to a company and to a person, they're going to do it again. And they've done it with Axial, they've done it with other companies. So it's not like it's something that was totally foreign to everyone's knowledge.
I think what happened was we had a passionate owner who was into, I think Pro Line, I don't know if they started in racing, but obviously I think they made money from the drag racing, crawling, all that stuff. But I think they started in racing, passionate owner, passionate people. And then I think it's kind of like a lot of things like that. I think there was nobody to pass that passion on to, like, and people get upset. But when it comes to that point and Horizon comes at you with that check, or that big company comes at you with that check, you're going to be like, man, I can take this check and I can just chill till I die. There's nobody else that's going to take over the mantle from this. And we've seen people like that, and we've seen it. Maximus, another good example. People don't realize how much that gentleman made RC good for lots of drivers. Like, they got a good paycheck from Maxima, and they got lots of the travel paid by Maxima for running this engines. And you could, these weren't like engines that you could just go buy anywhere, and they were expensive, but they're good engines, right? Good fuel. Once that gentleman passed away, his son really had no interest in RC. All gone. This is the type of money we was having in RC. So you move over to X-Ray. I'm sorry, you move over to hot bodies. 2021, you switch from OS to FX. I heard you talking about the FX engine. Was that a little bit nerve-wracking switching over to that engine from coming from OS?
Yes, because the main thing that was nerve-wracking is when it's been said, I don't know if it's completely true, but the idea we were under, or the conception we were under, is that if you left OS, you could never come back. Like, they would never have you back. So it was a bit daunting to kind of, burn a bridge without burning a bridge. So that was a bit daunting, but we had done some testing with the engines, and they were very promising, and they're very, very good. So that made it a little bit easier. Being more of a company man, kind of like just running more stuff of X-Ray was also a plus. So obviously learning the engines took a bit of time. Like, we had some problems at Nitro Challenge the first year, and just there was some bugs to work out. But after that, we figured it out, and the engines I feel like they had the best power band that I've ever driven, even better than OS. The fuel mileage wasn't quite as good, but it doesn't seem like anymore the fuel mileage is as important as it used to be. Because if you can drive super fast and just make one less mistake, that's basically a pit stop saved. So it seems like right now, the faster you can drive, the better. If you can go around and drive at 85%, 90% and make one less fuel stop, it doesn't seem to pay off a whole lot anymore. So I don't think his fuel mileage is quite as important. Obviously, if it's terrible, like if it's a 6 minutes, it's going to be at this mileage. But from going from 850 or 830 to 950 is not, or even 10 minutes is not that huge anymore. So I wasn't super concerned about that. I always did want him to try and figure out a little bit better fuel mileage, but it wasn't the end of the world. Happy with the engines, how they ran, the reliability, the how long the engines ran was really nice. Like, as far as lifespan. So the engine was less expensive than OS. It lasted longer. So, it was going to be easier to promote. So that was also a positive. I don't think, if I had to, it'd be really hard to choose between the two engines on which one I would take, really.
Okay. I heard you say that your X-Ray package was probably a better car over your HB car. You still feel that way?
I still feel that way. I know statistically showing it doesn't seem like it had much success, but we've already went over that and why that is. I feel like the car is better quality. If I took that car, the X-Ray that I finished with, if I took that back in 2015, 2014, 2020, like even like in Argentina, it was an extremely blown out track. I think it would have been unbeatable in that era.
Okay.
And I mentioned in another podcast, if I brought the Hot Buddies car to this era, I wouldn't be able to compete. So I just think it was a different time. The cars are all getting better. And I think for my car to even be competitive now shows that it's better than it used to be as far as overall car.
At this time, 2019, 2020, 2020, just before COVID hit, is X-Ray still very receptive to you and what you guys want to get done?
I will say that part has declined a little bit. They've been kind of more suspicious, maybe for lack of a better word, of us. And it did seem to decline the speed of our, like, how we moved forward. Like we didn't move forward quite as fast as we used to. For whatever reason that is, I'm not sure. But to be brutally honest, that's what happened.
Did you ever feel that? No, I've said this, sir, and I'll say it. I think Coelho is always going to be the number one driver at X-Ray as long as he's there. Did you ever feel that you had to always chase that as well?
I always knew he was going to be the number one guy just because he had seniority over me. He raced all the classes where I didn't race on road. As far as 8 scale, I still felt like I had. I was pretty even, I would say, with him on that level. Because 8 scale, I felt like it was pretty like my stronger class. 10 scale on dirt, I felt like I was stronger. Obviously on carpet, he's much better. So there's just different instances where you kind of know your place in the company.
Well, I remember you guys went over in 2018 to help him in the it was the national Euros. And it was very high altitude, in Portugal.
Yeah.
I know you guys went over and helped pitted him and did that for him and stuff like that, which was good. But I think Bruno is always gonna, as long as he's racing and still doing good, I think he's gonna always be number one at X-Ray. That's just my thoughts on it. European company, he's a European,
right?
He races so many classes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All right. So after DNC, obviously you like me I don't live in America. COVID hits. You're in Canada where it was really strict. You couldn't travel a lot. I was fortunate to start traveling again in 2021, just before the Nationals. You came over to the Nationals in 2021. I was going to say, you need some water. We talked for a long time. We go to LCRC. You're super fast, dude. Like you read your semi. Like I'm like, this guy's like everybody thought Cole Ogden was going to win that. I was like, no, this guy's going to win that. He was so fast. And then obviously the fuel tank debacle, which was awesome, by the way. Even not awesome for you. You was actually very calm about it. You was like, hey, when I talked to you afterwards, it kind of happens. I think you did mention about maybe the tank being getting expanded and all that type of stuff. But dude, like 2021 Nationals, you would have won that. I believe you would have won that race.
Yeah, that's partly why I was so calm too, because I had so much confidence. Like without winning, I knew that we had done everything right. The car was prepped properly. That we'd done all our research, and in my mind, that was still a win. That's kind of how I was looking at it. So even though that was a disaster, but whichever way you want to look at it is a disaster. So whatever, I'm not going to get into it too far with that, but just feeling like we had done everything we possibly could as far as preparation, the work behind the scenes, the work on the track. And I mean, you really can't do much more than that.
Okay. Fast forward, we come to a couple of 2022. We're seeing like this Fend Mayfield dominance. You're one of the guys that breaks it up a couple of times. You break it up at the US Open. When it was, I think it was at SCRC.
SCRC, yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to the Showers family. I think you won PMB, if I'm not mistaken.
I won PMB in 2021. Yeah. Right.
So you're breaking up this battle that we're seeing. Nobody's really stepping up and beating these guys. You're still able to do it. You're looking solid. You're probably not as traveling as much. You get married. You're being home a little bit more. Not doing as much 10 scale. You come out. You look very good at last year's Nationals, 2023, sorry. 2022 Worlds, you finished 5th. Maybe not not your best performance, but still in there, second top North American guy there. He was in the top 5 the entire main. I don't think I think early on in that main, I thought you've probably had something. I think you had something. But I think after like the first fuel stop or second fuel stop, it was kind of became the Ongaro and David show. But I still think he was fast at the 2022 Worlds.
Yeah, that one. We'll back up a little bit. So,
all right, let's back up.
So I think lately, with all the indoor tracks, the tracks being so fast, you see it in the mains. Like just if you look at the mains and the tires that are in there and that win, it's so much tire dependent now that's why you see these mains that have 8 J Concepts tires in the main. Then obviously J Concepts tires are better. Like at PMB when I won, I felt like my tires, the track was drying out, even though it was indoor track. The track was dry. Our tires were better. So then I was able to win. Places like also the US Open.
Dry outdoor track. Dry, dusty, rough.
Yeah, our tires were really good again. I could go fast. My car, every race, for as long as I can remember, my car has been extremely good. Like if I look at it, as far as just watching everybody else's car go around the track, I feel like my car, as far as car goes, is the best. Has been the best every single race. I feel like the tires are the only separation now for anybody, not just me, but everybody. And then if everyone's on JC tires, then you see either maybe the best driver or the guy has everything clicking at that time is the one that they fight for that after that. But if you have all the really good tire or a lot of people with really good tires, then it's more of like who is the better driver and whose car is set up better for that particular instance.
So are you in favor of controlled tires at Nationals, Euros, and Worlds?
I think if it was up to me, I would say control tire every single race, let alone if it was a big race. But it just, you could be swapping around so everyone gets equal tire cells. So that doesn't really matter. But if everyone's on, because tires are so important, if everyone's on the same tire, then you'd start to see who's a better driver, who's does more work on their car, who has more knowledge in their cars, that those people would start to succeed more. So I'm absolutely in favor of that. And I've heard some tire companies owners even saying they're in favor of it
because it saves them money.
It saves them money. They don't have to ship 8 different compounds, 10 different treads to each race. They can send a lot of.
I have no idea why 1/8 scale nitro racing is so against this.
Yeah, that's weird, isn't it? Like 10 scale is so spec everywhere in Europe.
They are so weird. Every single class out there has a spec tire for World Championship and a national championship and a European Championship. No, not us 8 scale guys. We want $3,000. We want $3,000 tire bills. That's what we want.
Yeah. Searching the entire race for it. Yeah.
So obviously this is ReXL outdoor dusty rough tracks. I can tell you're not the biggest fan of the indoor tracks, even though PMB is a different animal. It's a big track. It dries out, but you're still doing well. Obviously I'm guessing that the relationship with X-Ray isn't the best either. It's kind of wavering, I would say, as when results don't come like they should, like you think they should. Obviously, it's like anything, look, people have to understand rocking in RC. If all of our jobs were results based, I think we'd all just be under so much pressure. Like if you knew that you wasn't going to make, lots of jobs like this, but just imagine you're going to a race. You're going to a race where you're going to have fun. And the difference between you finishing first and second is a lot of money. You're going to be on a lot of, not only money, but potential, sweat equity, your value to that company, your value to all your sponsors. It's so much it meant, like if everybody's job was like that, like everything you did was scrutinized. You had to make sure everything you could imagine you're the fastest guy all weekend. You go out there in that first corner, someone T-boned you, race over, work your car.
Yeah.
Go on, you lost $5,000.
Right. Like at the Nationals in 2022, when it was in Arizona, I literally made it one lap and I landed on a rock, broke my front arm, and I was out. I felt like I was contention to fight for the win in that race too, and literally out in the first lap. Completely something I did nothing wrong, just bad luck of where I landed.
I think you said on that podcast, like the difference in contingency from first to second is like so much.
Yeah, it's like, it's fraction of first. And I think that's true in a lot of companies. Like I've heard other drivers say it. And when it was with Hot Bodies, when Torrance or Tatsuro owned it, it wasn't as bad, but it started to change as I got more like the more advanced I got in my experience and my results, the bigger that difference changed into be. Like
absolutely. All right. Well, let's go forward to this last year that you had. Still a decent year for you. I saw you, like I said, you was really good. I thought your car was really good. I thought you drove well at the Nationals. Your car looked like the best car out there, in my opinion. Dakota Fenn wins it. I saw you at AMS. No, first I saw you at Masters, and I remember asking you about what you're gonna do. You know, obviously silly season was coming up. This is another stressful thing that people do. Like, imagine every 2 years you might not have the same. You might have to look for another job. You know, just imagine that. You know, or not look for another job. Look for more employers. And I think you guys have to go through that. I've learned that a little bit as I've worked in the industry as well, looking for sponsors. And it started to look more and more like you might not be racing into. I remember when I saw you, I was like, so what are you going to do? And he was like, well, Mugen, you know, we talked about Mugen. We said it that one of the reasons that Mayfield isn't at Mugen is because of they pay. For people that don't understand, they don't pay a lot, right? Not enough to survive on, especially in Canada. But not only that, people get deals. It's not just one deal. It's many deals that make up your salary. And I was like, what? Like, I thought you would have been a perfect fit for Mugen, especially with their 10 scale stuff coming out.
Yeah.
So everybody thought you was going to go there. There were so many wild choices. And let's reiterate, you did not choose to leave X-Ray. You did not want to leave X-Ray. A lot of people think that you left because of Runafalk. I will say that I believe Runafalk coming definitely was why you had to leave, because X-Ray had to make room for that. But I don't think you left. I think you had a choice in it. I think it was, you know, a lot of people think you chose to leave. It wasn't like that.
Right. Yeah. So for sure wasn't like that. They did contact me in the appropriate time as far as contract goes to making changes. But with X-Ray, it was kind of it wasn't an open-ended contract, but there was no end date. So it would just, every year, it would just, if we didn't say anything by the end of September, it would just continue like it did for the next year. So when they called me, they did it before then, like they should have. And it was a surprise to me for sure, but I had no intention of leaving. Like there's obviously ups and downs in every company and every team, every sponsorship. So I was just in a down that I have to work through. So that's what I was planning on doing. At that time, I knew I was having a kid still. So I was going to try and work through that. But when they said they weren't going to renew my sponsorship, it was a very big shock to me. And there was absolutely I did not know Runafalk was coming until, I mean, like a week later when the world knew. That's when I found out. I didn't know anything before that. So that was definitely not a decision or even a thought in my mind. It's possible it was in theirs and that's why they did it. But they have every right to do what they want with their company. Like it's nothing, it's just business. It's not, I mean, it's not like that Runafalk said, you got to get rid of him.
Right. I know what you mean. They have to make room to pay him.
Right. Yeah.
They have to make room to pay him.
That's understandable. They can do what they want. I felt like I honored my end of the contract to the very end. I've returned everything, just like
you sent everything back to Slovakia or to RC America.
To RC America, and I don't know what happened to it after then. But I sent literally everything back, fully rebuilt, like I would go to Nitro Challenge, like I would go to a 10 scale race, like in perfect race ready condition, minus electronics, obviously. But yeah, so I did everything right in the contract as far as I was concerned, and I mean we left on as good a terms as I felt.
Right. So, still, I would say that by that time the communication and just getting what you wanted to get done was next to zero, I would say. Because I heard they needed a lot of improvements with that 2-wheel drive car, and they weren't listening to your dad about that. That's what I was told.
Well, there was a bit of conflict, I would say, between Martin Bayer and us towards the end. I'm not really going to go into it too far, but that was it was definitely the communication back and forth wasn't as free or welcomed as it started. For whatever
I would
reason,
say,
I'm not sure, but maybe it's a lack of results. Maybe they lost trust in us. Whatever it was, doesn't really matter. It's just kind of how it was. And we were going to work through it, but it ended. And, it's kind of the push. It wasn't the reason that I would decide to retire, but it was an extra little push. So, I mean, it is what it is.
So let's get into that. So retirement starts creeping into your brain. Look, I want to, if we kind of look back in this whole story, I would say once Proline got bought by Horizon, things started to dissolve, right? Like I would say that was the last. Proline, Maxima, these type of companies were putting a lot of money into RC. You can see it now, like even like people, like I think the RC pro driver is going to become it's going to be even harder to become a pro driver in the next couple of years, right? And actually got a salary from it.
Right.
Not just a salary. You have to get a living. This is a job. You have to get a living wage, right? You have to make money. It doesn't make sense to go out there and you can't pay your bills every month, right?
Right.
So
yeah.
I think with that happening, was there some offers on the table? Was there a chance for you to race again? Was it like, hey, we want to take you, but not your dad? How was there some things like that going on?
So I reached out to Mugen, obviously, because that was the company that I felt like I would have the most success with and enjoy racing the most with. Because Adam, the car is very good too, but being on the same team as Adam, I thought I could benefit the most from his experience and work as a team probably better with him than anybody else. Other than that, I mean, I reached out to a couple other companies, but not really expecting a whole lot. And it was just more of like a feeler. So it was kind of, I don't really know how to say this. Like I wasn't really looking too hard, I should say. After being the decline, I wasn't really I was kind of more decided then, almost without making a full decision. I was already like, okay, this is probably a good time to quit. I didn't want to keep racing until I was not making mains anymore and just kind of fading away. I'd rather retire while I was still somewhat competitive. And even though, I mean, I probably could still race for a few more years, but if I could have got like a contract and raced until the kid was born, I mean, that's not how contracts work, but I would have still raced if I could have until then. But not how contracts work. And the longer I wait, the harder it is to get a real job after that. So
absolutely,
I felt like this was a decent time, and kind of it all worked out kind of in the right timing.
Did it take a long time to come to the decision to retire?
Yeah, because it's kind of scary. Like, I mean, RC is the only thing I've ever known. Going to races, I mean, besides working in the hobby shop, that's the only job I've ever had. So it's definitely an unknown lifestyle. I mean, obviously I have friends that have regular jobs, so I'm not totally foreign to it. But just the difference in, it's kind of weird. Like RC can be some people's identity, and I was trying not to let that happen. But you have a little bit of, I guess, identity in it still, that when you're working a normal job, you're starting from the bottom again, and you don't. There's no like your reputation really doesn't really mean a whole lot. So you kind of have to start over. And I mean, it's been
nobody knows that you're world champion.
Yeah,
or nobody cares about that in real life.
Mean anything? Yeah.
Nobody cares you're a world champion, one national champion. That doesn't unfortunately, RC isn't that big. Unfortunately, we feel it is. In our world, it's big. Yeah, man, it's a sad thing to see. We kind of figured it was going to happen. I talked about it on my podcast. I thought it was very bad just for the industry as well, right? 30 years old, still got a lot of gas in your tank to do well, and one of the best in the world champion, all this type of stuff, and can't find what he wants to continue racing in RC. I think the industry is going through a shift right now. I'm going to ask you what your feelings on the industry in a minute. But before I do that, I have to bring this up because one of my all-time favorite moments in RC was you and Ryan Mayfield. I'm not going to hold you up too much longer. You and Ryan Mayfield, that divisions race. I say it's 50-50. People were like, we shouldn't be showing this on. So if anybody remember, this has been Mayfield pushed you and all this type of stuff. So I reworded it a different way. I said, no, Ty Tessman shows exactly how we de-escalate a situation like this. Tell us a little bit about that, because I heard you on EKJ24 on Chorus podcast. You think we need a little bit of drama. There was money racing was this was a big money race for you guys, even though every race is a money race, but this is outright hard cash.
Yeah.
So that was just one of the many incidents that happened that day. And how did you and Mayfield squash that at the Worlds that later on that year?
Well, when he was obviously frustrated after that race on the driver's stand, he told me to never talk to him again. Mm-hmm. So I respected his wishes, and I tried to not say anything. Like, he was obviously very upset, and I didn't know how long this was going to last. So I would just respect his wishes until at the Worlds, he said he came out, like, after the race was done, we were kind of sitting around. It was kind of pretty awkward between the Visions race and the Worlds, mm-hmm. as far as like when we'd see each other. So he said he got tired of that awkward feeling and what was happening. So he said, can we just put this behind us? So we went and had like kind of a chat and apologized to each other about it. And I mean, we just put it behind us, and we've been fine ever since. Like it's like it's never happened, which is awesome. So to be able to move forward from that, I think is really good, and shows that, I mean, you can still be human, even if there's altercations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We put this behind us. Do you feel living in Canada and the amount of practice and testing that you need to do nowadays is a hurdle that you would it's always probably been a hurdle for you, but now with the competition so tight, do you think it's more of a hurdle for you now with everybody working really hard to do, not saying that nobody was doing it back then, but you obviously had a disadvantage. You can't race all year round, you can't test all year round. Do you feel that was going to be a big hurdle that you couldn't overcome as well?
I felt like it was a hurdle. I don't think maybe as far as I couldn't overcome it, but definitely it was difficult when, not necessarily like we could test stuff, but when you test on your own and then go to actually put it into practice and into a race is different. So knowing how fast to go is kind of hard when you're driving by yourself testing. You kind of basically you test stuff at home, then you're like, okay, this feels pretty good. So we're going to go to this race and see how it stacks up against everybody else and what they've accomplished in their time off, and see how it competes in speed wise and whatever. So it's a little bit difficult when you're doing this kind of far away and then have to go to a race to find out. Whereas other people like Spencer Mayfield, they can go to the track together and push each other.
Absolutely.
Other people like in the States, it's not near as far to travel, so they can go to more races. They can even go to a club race with each other and go and kind of gauge yourself a bit easier. So I didn't have that, which I think it definitely was a bit of a disadvantage. But I mean, at the beginning of the year, we usually went down to the States before Nitro Challenge a couple weeks early to try and get the groove. So we could make our way around it, but it was definitely, we had to put a lot more work in to do it.
Okay. Looking back on your decision to leave HB, and now we're looking at what, like, kind of HB is still a very popular car in certain areas of the USA. We just saw the Asian Buggy Championships. HB is popular there. No real top drive. Well, they have Co Ogden, but I would say if you're looking back, what's your thoughts on HB racing now in the position that is in? We hear rumors about it, and whatnot. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm glad I left, and I'm just going off of what I see at races and the hearsay, but it doesn't sound like they're doing well based on the people that are leaving and what they're saying. So that's kind of all I have to go on, because I obviously don't talk to the owner directly. So it doesn't look good, but I mean, who knows? Like, people have said other companies are going to go broke, and they never do. So I don't really know what's happening with that. As far as the car development, I've heard up and downs about that. So I don't think that's probably the main issue why people are leaving, but there is obviously a reason for so many people leaving, especially in the last year and a half.
Yes, absolutely. How about our sport in general now, as you're now only been a few months, but you're looking from the outside in. What are your thoughts on the direction of our sport/hobby? And what do you think we need to do differently to do things differently and make it better? I would say bring it up to speed with the rest of the world.
I don't know. It's tough because it's the RC industry isn't growing as fast as the companies are popping up. Like the pieces of the pie are getting smaller and smaller because everyone wants a little bit now, and the industry isn't growing at the same amount to keep those pieces of pie the same size. So I think they need more races like Visions. I think that would help, where it's a spectator race at a big off-road event already, so that people don't have to make a special trip for it. They can just kind of stumble upon it and it's there. I think that would help. I think videos like what Corey does help a lot.
Better format, I heard you say too, of racing.
Right, better format, kind of like what Visions does. Something more exciting, something that's easier to follow for people, whether it's the heads-up races or some sort of scoring that people can watch. Kind of like it's like in Supercross, you can look at the big screen, or you can watch it happening live and kind of follow it like that. But something that's more exciting than just qualifying and how we've been doing races like for the last 30 years. So something needs to change as far as that. I think TV shows like what Visions did also, like they're going a lot of stuff in the right direction, and I think they just need a little bit more backing for this to really take off. But having conflicts like you saw happen, having that
putting some
more, because in every racing, like if you see dirt oval, NASCAR, they all have the flare-ups. Even F1, I mean, you still see people freaking out on each other, and that's what people like watching. They don't go to the NASCAR race necessarily to watch the cars go around. They go for the crashes and the drama and the exciting parts. So if you don't ever show those, I don't think it's exciting for people to watch. They just kind of see these cars going around and they're like, oh, that's okay. But
absolutely,
it's not. It needs more drama, whether it's in the pits, whether it's on the track. They just need to show that more. I don't think maybe that's the awesome thing to show the integrity of RC, but it's in every racing. Everybody has a temper.
It's part of life.
It can happen, like in the heat of the moment. It's part of life. Yeah, like it's gonna happen. You should just show it. And it's what attracts people to racing and competitiveness.
How about access? Like, I agree with you. First off, I agree that right now we have more RC racing out there in the algorithm than ever before. Almost every race is being streamed now. There's lots of YouTube channels out there. It's still not enough. Trust me, I know. We seeing reluctance. You were one of the first drivers to make a website, do your how-to videos. You know, a lot of people, like a lot of things you don't probably get credit for is like your dad. I know your sister was a big part of this. Your website's very informed and up to date. You have your YouTube channel, like you're breaking in of an engine. I watched that a lot to learn how to break in an engine with your dad. You guys have been doing that. More drivers have to do that as well. All that helps things get on the algorithm. So that was very smart of you to do that from early age. She was one of the first racers to do that. I know you said your sister was responsible for do that. She did all your website stuff. So thank you to her as well. Yeah. Big advantage in your career. We have a lot of racing going on, but it's still the same people. It's a trickle of new people coming into RC, but the same people going to the same races, it seems.
Yeah, it's RC is not an easy thing to get into because there's a lot of stuff you need to know. They're not easy to run, like the nitro engine's not something that's why you don't see nitro as popular as electric. It's just there's more stuff to learn, and like the videos I think are very helpful, but there's not enough for the people that are coming in. I think it just needs to happen more. And I probably should have done more. Like Adam, you see him, how many he's doing. I probably could have done more. But I think that's kind of what's getting people, like they get into it and then they get out of it by the time their car doesn't work anymore for whatever reason, like a maintenance engine doesn't work, whatever it is. It's kind of discouraging to people. I think that's when we had the hobby shop too. That was the biggest thing that turned people.
E-buggy is the gateway. E-buggy, right. E-truggy, gateway to getting into RC, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna wrap this up. I know we've been going for a long time. So now you are training to be a welder. They're in Canada. You're an apprenticeship. You're working from 6 to 4. You're working a normal, every working man's job. Is it exciting for you? Because you've never done this before. So it's something new completely for you.
Yeah, it definitely is something new. And the job I'm at is kind of like there's something different every day. It's not like I'm doing welding the same piece of stuff every single day. So there's always something different, which is enjoyable. And I mean, there's some satisfaction in working hard, like actually exerting yourself more, working long hours, having a schedule. I don't know, it's strange, and I don't want to take anything away from RC races or RC racing, but there's a different satisfaction I get from this, having like a more of like a, it's hard to say this without cutting down someone, but it's kind of like just a normal job, a normal lifestyle.
It is normal. You're not traveling and living out of a suitcase for 2 weekends out of the month and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, there's more structure and there's more kind of freedom, I guess. Even like when I was home, I could do whatever I wanted. I would still wrench and prepare constantly. So it's not like I had just a bunch of time off just to sit around and do nothing. So now when I come home from work, I don't have to think about it. I can just relax and do whatever I want. So it's just different. I'm getting used to it, but it doesn't quite feel real right now, if it makes sense. Like, it's just,
how long is your apprenticeship for? How long do you have to do that for?
It's 3 years total. So it'll be like I'll work some, then go to school, then work some, and kind of do that until it's
Picked up any other hobby? I know you and your dad built a nice badass Ford Ranger. Picked up any other hobbies since leaving RC?
I haven't really picked anything up. I was into mountain biking a little bit, like we did this the past year. Did some more mountain biking, downhill biking. So probably going to do more of that now that I have weekends free. And just probably work on the Ranger a little bit more slowly. See if I can. It's always going to be a project, so it's not like it's ever going to be done. But
I have a scenario for you.
Okay.
What if end of this year, some company comes to you and says, "Hey, we want you to come. We want you to come out of retirement. We want you to come drive. We're going to pay you a decent salary. You're going to travel. Now you're going to have a little one. Now it's going to be a little different." Do you think in a year's time, would you do it? And how? Oh, you disconnected again.
You still there?
Yeah. Sorry, you disconnected. Let's go in 3, 2, 1. Would you? So if somebody came up and offered that to you, would you do it again? And how fast, after a year off, how long do you think it would take you to get up to speed?
So it's hard to say right now what I'll feel like. I have no desire right now to really do it, but who knows in a year. And as far as coming back, I think that's kind of what would be my biggest fear of coming back. Also, not maybe biggest fear, but biggest concern about being able to compete is the time off and how much has progressed in the industry, and like the speed of everything, kind of getting back into it. I'm not sure. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in myself that I could do that again. I mean, I'm sure with a little bit of practice, but it would be very difficult. And it would be, my worry is that I wouldn't be able to compete anymore and it would look kind of foolish. So take that.
Well, you could be like Tom Brady, come back with a Super Bowl.
It's possible, yeah. I mean, like, who knows? Maybe would go back to the good old days.
Would you, your son or daughter, your child that you're having there, would you encourage them to take up RC racing as a hobby / sport in the future?
I don't know. We'll see. Maybe see what it's like when the time comes that they would be able to enjoy it.
Yeah. So that's going to be my last question. Your family was very involved in your racing career. Your mom, your dad, throughout your years. I've seen your mom be your pit person. I've seen your dad be your pit person. Who's the fastest out of your mom and your dad?
I don't think either of them. I mean, my dad's he's done it more on his own. It's hard to say. I would. Yeah,
she probably hasn't done it on her own as much.
Yeah, I don't think
she could do it
on her own. I don't. Well, she might have done her own way back, but I don't know if I could answer that question really. They're obviously extremely fast together. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I would say better question. Who would you rather have on the microphone, your dad or her? talking to you on the headset?
Probably my dad, just
Mhm.
because of like his mindset and strategy. I would say is more in the competitive mindset, maybe.
Mhm.
But as far as like someone that you like, what it sounds like is you're asking who would you rather like give you crap? Is kind of like
Yeah, because your dad would be like, "Come on, Ty, stop doing that." Mom's going to be like, "Okay, yeah." I
yeah.
think it was a great team and they worked together. I was watching some of their pits through some of the world. I was watching other footage. And you said that she handled all like your traveling and your logistics stuffs.
Yeah.
So that was you had a great. Not only did you have a great package, equipment wise, you had a great team behind you that
For
made you.
sure. Yeah, that really, I don't think people realize it, how much they were a part of my team, but they
Mhm.
were huge in my success and just like taking care of stuff so I didn't have to worry about it. Like the
Mhm.
travel, the booking, all that stuff. I didn't have to worry about that. I could just go to the race and drive. I wouldn't have to worry about driving the rental car, which my dad always did. So there was a lot of benefits that allowed me to, and pitting too. I wouldn't have to think about pit stops. He would tell me,
Mhm.
he would do all the calculation. He would figure out if it to get out of traffic or whatever would be the best pit strategy in the moment to do. So I could literally just focus on racing. And I think that was a big advantage on my part, or
Absolutely.
on my like
Absolutely.
a big advantage to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Ty, I've taken up enough of your time. I could still talk to you some more. I wanted to say thank you for what you and your family have contributed to the RC community and your time. I still think you had a lot more gas in your tank. I think it's unfortunate that you did retire. I think it's unfortunate for the industry that you do retire at such a young age, which I think you could still do. I think you could go out there and win. But at the same time, you also went out on on like when you was at when you still was at your best. Unfortunate that you're out, but many great players in different sports. Barry Sanders retired early. You know, we see these guys retire and go. And the Francis brothers retired early and went on to bigger and better things in life. RC is not the end all be all, and there is life after RC.
Right.
You look a lot less stressed than you used to at races because I was like, man, I would look at you and be like, he looks so stressed at races, and I understand that. You're doing a normal job. You get up. You have coworkers that you probably talk crap to all day long. Like that's all stuff that's part of growing up, and it's a little bit different than being at the RC track, right?
Right. Yeah. A lot of
Uh,
people make RC life, and
mhm.
I mean, there's a lot more to it. Family's super important. If you
Absolutely.
sacrifice family for that, you're gonna regret it someday, and that's what I didn't want to do. I was talking to Lutz and Jared about that, and they have obviously a big family, both of them,
Mhm.
and I can tell in their voice that they regret, or maybe not regret, but they wish they could be home more than they
You
are.
miss a lot of
So,
things. You miss a lot of things when you're not at home.
right, yeah, and you can't get them back.
Birthdays. Yep, you cannot get them back. I've traveled a lot while having kids. I know how you feel. I know that feeling. I wish you all the best in your future with your young one that's coming up, you and your wife. I wish you happiness and
Thank,
peace.
thank you,
And
appreciate it.
thank you for all your contributions that you and your family have done to RC. And I don't know, man. Maybe we're gonna see a Tom Brady happen. If it does, I hope you kick ass and take names. And thank you for everything. Thank you for your time, man. And I'm gonna let you go because it's getting late there in Alberta. You gotta wake
Okay,
up and make 6.
yeah,
So got a real job now. No
hmm,
more sleeping in. Not saying that you did, but you know what I mean.
yeah, yeah.
I'm happy for you, man. Thank you for your
Okay,
time and good luck with everything in your future.
okay. Thanks for the interview.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the chat with Ty Tessman. If you're listening to this, I'm probably on my way or already at the North Georgia Shootout. If you're going to be at the race, come see me. Come get some stickers. Come say hello. Take a picture with me. Come just say what's up. I like meeting new people as well. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this interview with Ty Tessman. And I'm still a little bit kind of, I don't know if I'm shocked or in awe that he's kind of still out of RC. It's kind of a weird feeling that I have about it. So part of me also thinks like maybe he'll come back. Maybe he won't. I don't know. But thank you to Ty. We wish you all the best in your new career, as well as becoming a father as well. Probably by this time he's already become a father. We did record this about a month and a half ago. Thank you everybody for the continued support. We can't do it without you guys. The NNRC squad. Shout out to all of you guys around the world. Shout out to the YouTube members and patrons of the No Name RC podcast. If you wish to support the podcast a little bit financially, you can. Links for that in the written description of the podcast, and you get such benefits as early release. Also, in the written description of this podcast, we have links, affiliate links, coupon codes, and just links to these companies that support the podcast and showing the sponsor some love, shows the podcast some love. So if you can, use those links and say, hey, I heard about your No Name RC podcast. You might even save some money as well. They are Invisible Speed, High Tech RC, Corsatec USA, Sidewinder Fuel, Mayako, Beach RC, Techno RC, Clinic RC, Stacked RC, RaceCraft USA, RC Box Club, Call RC, Elite RC Productions, Florida RC Championships, RC Body Armor, SJ Racing Builds, House of RC, RCGP, David Runnerfalk is one of our drivers, as well as Robert Battier, Alexander HagBerg, Matty G, Pekko Ivinen, you know, happening, and the Ice Knight, Mason Fuller. We hope you guys have a good weekend of RC. I'll see you guys at the North Georgia Shootout. Let's burn some nitro. Let's have some fun. And yeah, make it a great RC weekend for you all. Nitro's the glory. E-Buggy pays the bills. If you ain't grinding your slide, and Lefty is out. See you all at the races this weekend. I'm just trying to find my outro, you know, I never find it. Bye-bye.